Hello, everybody, and welcome to the table. Today we are talking about combat in The Witcher. This is going to be my last video for a while, but we will do the mystery investigation system down the road. I hope you enjoy your stay. The Witcher's right hand rose, as fast as lightning, above his right shoulder, while his left jerked the belt across his chest, making the sword hilt jump into his palm. The blade, leaping from the scabbard with a hiss, traced a short, luminous semicircle and froze, the point aiming at the charging beast. At the sight of the sword, the monster stopped short, spraying gravel in all directions. The Witcher didn't even flinch. Andreas Sapowski, the last witch. Don't be discouraged. You may be frustrated getting to the point if you're not playing a Witcher. Don't be. Witches are bona fide killing machines, but they are far from the only deadly people out there. We see many others, including the dwarf Yarpin Zigrin and lordly knight Ek of Denels, who have taken on and not only survived, but come out victorious against some of the most dangerous monsters out there. That's without even taking into account the sociopathic mercenary Leo Bonhart, who is rumored to have killed 3 Witchers in single combat. Combat in The Witcher is deadly, bloody, and punishing. When blades start swinging and arrows start flying, it's best for you to keep an eye out and plan your moves carefully. You can go running into battle, hacking and slashing hither and thither, but that likely won't help you too much in a real solid fight against anything tougher than a mugger in the local tavern. Always keep in mind that damage can be punishing and death is never too far away. A tactical warrior will always make it farther than a savage madman. Don't fight groups. Even the most skilled warrior in the world is in trouble if they have to fight more than one opponent at a time. While you engage one person, more enemies attack you from behind, dogpile you to the ground, or otherwise ruin your day. The fact of the matter is, you need focus to fight, and it's hard to focus on more than one person at a time. There are ways to help in that situation. Put all your opponents in front of you. Wield a shield. Keep your opponents at a distance. All of these approaches help, but none of them eliminate the core problem. Keep this in mind while you face bandits and lesser monsters like Neckers. One of these enemies is easy to kill, but how will you fare against 4 when every time you swing at one, 3 more attack you from behind? Use your advantages. You should also always exploit every advantage and vary up your fighting where possible. Are you in a swamp with a boggy pond nearby? Throw your enemy into it and attack while they try to swim out. Can you back your opponent against a wall or corner them so they can't escape? Do it. Fast strike's not landing enough damage to get through armor? Try a strong strike, or pin them so a buddy can stab in between the plates of their armor. Keep your opponents on their toes. Fighting monsters without silver. Most people who encounter monsters are forced to fight them without a silver weapon to help them. They are also usually forced to fight said monsters with no magical or alchemical aid. Common folk fighting monsters tend to poison them with bait, or to get a whole bunch of people together with spears and sharpened branches and pin the monster down so the bravest and strongest young lad can behead it with an axe. This works on smaller monsters but proves difficult on things like griffins and grave hags. Critical wounds. These are wounds, and then there are critical wounds. Both will kill you, but a critical wound is 100 times worse. Regular wounds represent cuts, bruises, scratches, and such. Smaller problems that can all add up to your death. Obviously, the more damage you take from the wound, the more impressive it is. Critical wounds, on the other hand, represent structural damage to your body. Wounds that not only drag you closer to death's door, but also break down your body's ability to fight and function. These can be literal structural damage, such as broken or cracked bones, but they can also be less obvious things like brain damage and internal organs rupturing. All of these wounds are grievous, and many of them cause major hemorrhaging or some other forms of ongoing damage, as well as negatives to stats or abilities. While you can keep fighting for quite a while with a few minor wounds, a critical wound puts a finite timer on your life. Until healed, you are hampered in combat and getting closer and closer to death. These types of wounds are too complicated to just put a bandage on or to suture yourself up. You can stop the bleeding or close the wound, but you're going to need full-on invasive surgery, and for that you're going to need a doctor. If you can stagger to a doctor, you'll make it, but it'll be a while before you heal. Luckily, these critical wounds are based on how skilled you are compared to your opponent, how lucky you both are. Fighting monsters. Keep in mind when you're going up against monsters that fighting a monster is very different from fighting a man. Monsters have special abilities and defenses that can make fighting them hellish. To start with, monsters are resistant to conventional weapons, taking much less damage from a non-silver weapon than a regular person would. If you run into a battle, say, with a griffin and are unaware of its damage resistance and stunning streak, you will probably have some very fatal issues. Of course, on the other hand, if you enter a battle with a fiend where loud noises can stun them, you might come away with victory despite the amazingly unfair odds. The key to fighting monsters is knowledge. If utilized properly, solid knowledge can turn a monster from unbeatable to survivable. Fighting with magic. Mages are the artillery of the world of The Witcher. They wield power greater than any other person on the planet. They have limits and often require people around them to help them operate best or to defend them from attack. The worst situation for a mage is to be in melee range of an opponent, or, God forbid, multiple opponents. Keep this in mind when you are a mage who will be in combat often or you're facing against mages. Many mages don't wear heavy armor because it interferes with spellcasting, and thus many weapons can pierce a mage at close range. This combined with a lack of weapon training leads most mages to stay at range by use of teleportation or have allies act as a barrier between them and the enemy. However, if a mage stays at range and manages stamina well, they can bring tremendous effects to the battlefield. Just remember, staves and amulets are your friends, and spells can be fickle. The basics. Rounds. Before you can play the Witcher TRPG, you'll have to know the ins and outs of rounds. A round is a time block of around 3 seconds, half of which from D&D and PF2E. From Pathfinder and D&D, those are usually 6 seconds. In Witcher, it's half that. Rounds signify the order in which things happen in game. Rounds primarily are used during combat, but GMs also use them to keep track of screen time, aka how long people get to be in the center of attention in the game. In and out of combat during a round, every person in the scene has a chance to act. These actions are all taken simultaneously within the space of 3 seconds. Initiative. Initiative measures how quickly the participants, usually in a combat, react to the situation around them. Before going into rounds, you put the players and NPCs, non-player characters, in order from the highest to the lowest. This is the order in which the GM asks for your action that round. When the person with the lowest initiative has gone, go back to the person with the highest initiative. To get your initiative, roll a d10 and add it to your ref stat. If players roll a tie, remember the number they rolled. Have them roll again. The players go at their original initiative, but in order by their second roll. Though there are some ways to temporarily change your initiative, see fast draws, usually keep the same initiative for the entire combat or scene. Actions. In one round, you have enough time to move a distance equal to your speed in meters and perform one action. Speaking is never considered an action, except during verbal combat. Line of sight, vision, cone, and facing. To perform most attacks against a target, you must have line of sight to the target and be within range. Line of sight means having nothing between you and your target that obscures your view of the target. If there's nothing between you and your target, you have clear line of sight. If there's something solid between your target, you don't. So using cover for cases where solid objects partly obscure your target. Your vision cone determines what you can see around you. Anything outside of your vision cone is invisible to you. When targeting something outside of your vision cone, you take a -3 to the attack and cannot aim. An enemy outside of your vision cone gains a +3 to their attack against you. Normally, your vision cone includes everything in front of you from one shoulder to the other. When wearing a helmet with restricted vision, your view is limited to a cone directly in front of you, and a Witcher's awareness bonus and scent tracking are disabled. Here are your actions. An attack. You can make an attack roll. See in-depth combat. Initiate verbal combat. You can begin verbal combat with an opponent. See verbal combat. Cast magic. Depending on the casting time, you can cast or begin casting any form of magic. See magic resolution. Use a skill to do something. You could use a skill. See skill resolution. Pick up, draw an item, or weapon. You can pick up or draw a weapon or item. Those are your actions that you do in addition to your move action. And here are your full round actions. This combines your action and your move. So it takes your full turn to do these. Run. You can move up to your speed ×3 by taking your whole turn to run. Actively dodge. By taking your turn to actively dodge, you impose a -2 penalty on anyone trying to strike you in melee range for that round. That is really helpful. Aim. By taking a full turn to aim, you could raise your ranged weapon by +1. You could raise your ranged attack by +1. You could aim for up to 3 turns in a row, giving you a +3 to your attack. That's really helpful if you want to make a strong strike with a bow. A crossbow can't make a strong strike for obvious reasons. Take a recovery action. By taking your turn to catch your breath, you can gain back an amount of stamina equal to your recovery stat. Extra action and defense. You can spend 3 points of stamina to take 1 extra action at a -3 malice at any point during your turn. Similarly, if you are forced to take more than 1 defensive action during a round, repositioning, blocking, etc., each action costs 1 stamina. However, if you choose to use your action to actively dodge, you do not suffer stamina drain for defending. Using miniatures. If you are using minis and a grid map to map your combat, keep in mind that each square is equal to 2 meters. If your speed stat is an odd number, round it up to the nearest even number for the purposes of movement. So if you have a 5, it's 6, if it's 7, it's 8, etc. And this is a lot of information, so we are going to ignore that. And then this is the continuation. Finally, your facing is just what direction you're facing and thus what direction your vision cone is facing. Changing facing as part of your movement does not count as an action. That's important. You can change your facing at any time you want. It is free. Ambushes. You gain bonuses against enemies by sneaking up to them. You must be the one to instigate a combat to ambush a target. First, make a successful stealth check against the target's awareness check. If you succeed, you go unnoticed and can sneak up to your opponent. Next, make your attack. Your target still gets to defend themselves, but you gain a +5 against all targets who are unaware of you. This bonus lasts for the first round of the combat. If one of your targets notices you but doesn't have time to alert the rest, you still get the bonus against those who aren't aware. After you make your ambush attack, everyone in the area makes an initiative roll, and initiative continues from there. Your first attack, the ambush, isn't counted in the initiative. So, if you pull an ambush, you get +5 to your attack roll, and until all of them are alerted, it lasts till your next. Oh, it lasts until the next round, so it's pretty good. Ganging up. When a person is attacked by multiple assailants in melee range, adjacent or within 2 meters with a reach weapon, they take a -1 penalty to defense for every assailant beyond the first. For example, if you were surrounded by 4 knickers, you would take a -3 to your defense. That's bad. Damage. Damage is split into 2 categories: lethal and non-lethal. Any wound that brings you closer to death deals lethal damage. When your amount of lethal damage is equal to your health points, you enter death state and begin dying. See death saves. Temporary damage that impairs you, concussion, shock, is non-lethal damage. When you've taken non-lethal damage equal to your current stamina, you are knocked unconscious and treated as stunned until you recover at least 20 points of stamina, with recovery actions and make a stun save. Damage of both types is usually determined by rolling different combinations of 6 or 10-sided dice. Different weapons also do one of the 4 different damage types: piercing, slashing, bludgeoning, and elemental. So there's actually no such thing as a 10-sided D10 weapon damage. That's just a holdover from when they wanted to do that. So ignore that part. So it's only different combinations of 6-sided dice. There's no 10-sided dice weapons. Just completely ignore that part and you're good. Holding action. You can choose to act later in the round by holding your action. If you choose to hold your action, the initiative order continues as normal, but you can jump in and act before or after someone further down the initiative list. If you hold your action until the very end of the round, you must either use your turn or sack it. You cannot hold your action and choose to act at the beginning of the next round. Rate of fire. Rough. Monsters and common humanoid enemies attack differently than players and major enemies. These opponents have a rate of fire, ROF, for each weapon they use. This shows you how many times that weapon can be used in one round. These opponents can also not use strong or fast strikes. Fast strikes versus strong strikes. When making an attack, you can make either a fast or a strong strike. A fast strike allows you to attack twice in one round without penalty. These attacks don't have to be made against the same target as long as both targets are within range. Fast strikes can be very useful when you're surrounded by a large group of enemies. When making a strong strike, you make one huge attack at a -3 malice to your roll, which does double damage against the opponent. Strong strikes are best when you need to do a lot of damage to a slower target with a lot of armor. Bows. When using a strong strike with a bow, you pull the bow to full draw and fire, doubling the damage. Since it takes quite a bit of time to draw and nock arrows, bows can only fire once, even if making a fast strike. Crossbows. You cannot make strong or fast strikes with a crossbow since they have 1 draw length and draw weight. Hit location. After you attack, determine what body part you hit. As you aim for a specific spot, roll in the humanoid or monster damage location tables. Aiming for specific parts is harder, but can be worth it. Each part has a penalty to hit and a damage mod. After you've reduced your damage based on armor, see damage reduction, you multiply the remaining damage based on the modifier for the location. So here's the humanoid damage location table. Head, roll a 1. The penalty is -6. Damage times 3. Torso, 2 to 4. Penalty, a -1. Damage times 1, which means it's still normal. Right arm and leg, 5 and 6 respectively. -3 penalties each. Half damage. Right leg and right and left legs, 7 to 10. -2 each. Half damage. Monsters which have different anatomy from humans have a different table for damage locations. When fighting a non-humanoid monster, roll in a monster damage location table. So head is 1 again. Penalty -6 times 3. Torso, 2 to 5. -1 times 1. Right limb, 7 to 8. -3. Half. Left limb, 8 to 9. -3. Half. Tail or wing, 10. -2. Half. Certain types of attacks, bombs, traps, and some spells, for example, strike multiple body locations at once. Bombs and explosive traps hit everywhere, dealing their damage to every location separately. In this case, calculate full dice damage for each location separately. There's a lot of math involved, and I'll get into crits and their effects down the line. Party initiative. To speed things up, you can choose to designate one player as leader of the party. The leader rolls initiative for the entire party, and the roll is added to each other player's ref score to determine their initiative. This method is good for getting initiative for large groups of enemies as well. Fast draw. By declaring a fast draw at the start of the round, you raise your initiative by +3 for that round by taking a -3 to your attack. However, you must make an attack and you can't benefit from aiming or any other aim-related ability. If your weapon is not drawn, you may draw it as part of this action. Layering table. To determine the total EV of your layered armor, combine the EV of the individual layers and then add +1 for each layer of medium armor and +2 for each layer of heavy armor. The SP bonus to each layer is calculated in before the armor is layered together. Resistances and special effects carry over but do not stack. So according to Cody Posmus, he says to get rid of layering entirely, but it's literally up to you. Armor. Armor is anything that makes it harder for an attack to kill you. For players, this mostly means reinforced clothing and plates of steel. For monsters, this can be hardened skin or natural shells. All armor has a stopping power. The stopping power of armor determines how much incoming damage it absorbs when an attack strikes you. When an attack strikes you, subtract the SP of your armor from the incoming damage. It's important to remember that armor is based on location. A steel plate under your silk shirt doesn't protect your head, because there's separate head armor, torso, and legs. Remember, have armor for your head, or you're just going to die quick. Damage resistance. DR is structural or magical protection from specific damage types. Fireproof clothes, for instance, or scaly skin that turns blades. Like armor, DR saps the sting from attacks. If you take damage of a type, piercing, slashing, bludgeoning, elemental, you're resistant to have the damage after applying your armor's SP. 100%. If you take 20 damage, and you have an SP of 10, and that damage is fire damage, or whatever else, and you have resistance to fire, reduces it after the SP, so that 20 goes to 10, and you only take 5. Layering armor. Layering armor may seem like a good idea. Stack up a gambeson, a brigadine, and some plate armor, and you can laugh at a damn ballista bolt. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that for 2 reasons. First, armor is cumulative. Underneath your brigadine is a gambeson and a chainmail shirt, and underneath your plate armor is another gambeson, another chainmail shirt. So you stack gambeson, brigadine, and plate armor is really 3 gambesons, a brigadine, 2 shirts of chainmail, and plate armor over top of it all. Run 4 layers of armored trousers and great helm with 2 padded caps, 2 chainmail coists, and leather hood. Not only do you look like the Michelin Man's mercenary brother, you're also wearing about 39 kilos of armor alone, each layer adding more encumbrance. For this reason, you can only stack 3 pieces of armor, and you can only wear 1 layer of heavy armor and 1 layer of medium armor. Second, each layer of armor doesn't add its full SP. Any armor lighter than your heaviest armor acts as a buffer between you and the blow. To determine how much extra armor you get, subtract the lighter armor from the heavier armor and find the difference on the table on the next page. Again, Cody has said in a Sage Advice thread within his Discord, within the RTL Discord, to completely throw away layering because there's a lot of math involved and sometimes really OP characters. But again, it's for you and your players to agree. This bonus is the maximum amount of the weakest armor's SP that you added to your stronger armor. If you have 3 layers, calculate the layers in pairs. Compare your first and second layers to find their combined strength, then compare that augmented strength to the third set of armor to get full strength of the armor. Difference in SP: 0 to 4 plus 5, 5 to 8 plus 4, 9 to 14 plus 3, 15 to 20 plus 2. Armor piercing. There are 2 armor piercing levels in the Witcher tabletop RPG. Armor piercing and improved armor piercing. Armor piercing weapons negate the damage resistance of any armor that they hit. Improved armor piercing weapons not only ignore damage resistance, but also have the SP value of the armor they hit. So back to the 10 SP example. If someone has an improved armor piercing weapon and you have 10 armor, they ignore 5 of that armor, so they deal more damage to you. Staged penetration. Attacks that hurt you also damage your armor, making it less resilient to further attacks. Each attack that penetrates a piece of armor and does damage to the wearer reduces the SP of that armor by 1 point. When the SP reaches 0, the armor is fully broken and no longer soaks any damage. Using cover. When you are under fire from archers, arbalists, mages, and like, you can choose to take cover. Anything solid that comes between you and a projectile counts as cover. An attack must penetrate the cover before it can get to you. If an attack does enough damage to exceed the cover's SP, the rest of the damage strikes you and must get through your armor before doing damage to you. Example: stone wall, 30 SP. Tree, 30. Brick wall, 25. Wooden wall, 10. Heavy wooden door, 15. Steel door, 20. Cart, 10. Tent, 5. Thatch root, 7. One barrel, 10. Brambles, 7. Layering example. Say for instance you want to wear a gambeson, a brigadine, and a full plate armor on your torso. Well, first, look at all the individual stopping powers. Gambeson has a 3. Brigadine has a 12, and plate armor has a 20. Now subtract the gambeson from the brigadine, and we get a 9. If we compare that to the table, it shows that the Gambeson and Brigadine, our SP, becomes 15. 12 plus 3. We then subtract that 15 from the SB20 plate armor and get 5. Consulting our table again, the total SB we have is 24. We also have a total EV of 6. So there's diminishing returns here. That's important. Human shields. We all knew it would come to this. Yes, people, animals, and monsters can count as cover when in a pinch or feeling vindictive. To use a person or creature as a human shield, you have to put them between you and the attack by rolling a brawling or physique check against their physique or dodge escape. If you succeed, they are hit by the attack instead of you. If you are already grappling or pinning the person, you are not required to make this roll, and the creature you're holding is considered cover for your torso. Any attack that hits your torso hits the shield instead of you. For information on attacking through a human shield, see the sidebar. Human shield is cover. If you're using a human shield and someone tries to attack you through the shield, they must do enough damage to get past the shield's body stat, plus any torso or armor that they have. The shield takes damage as if they had been hit, and any damage that penetrates the shield's SB, body and armor, hits you in the torso. Lost teeth and dented helmets. Did you know my back 5 teeth on my left side are wooden? Yeah, Second War took a bit more out of me than I figured going in. Also taught me to not rely on helmets too much. For a while I wore a helmet like a lot of the other lads. One battle, the black ones broke our pike line and hit the arbalest hard. I grabbed my axe, but some bloody bastard got me with a blow to the head so hard my jaw snapped shut. I crushed 5 of my teeth. Like I pulled my tongue in, or I'd have a hard time being the chatty son of a bitch I am now, hey. Reliability. Reliability determines how easy an item can break. It applies if you attempt to block with a weapon or shield. See Defenses, page 164. And to fumbles. See Criticals and fumbles. When an item's reliability reaches 0, it's useless for blocking or attacking. The item can be fixed with an appropriate crafting roll. See crafting section. Wounds. Assuming your armor didn't stop an attack, you take damage. Enough lethal damage will begin to hamper your actions. This is called your wound threshold, and it varies based on your maximum health points. When your current HP goes below your wound threshold, you have your ref, dex, int, and will. You're holding yourself together with sheer willpower and adrenaline. So, max HP is 15, your wound threshold is 3. That means if you are at below 3 HP, you're minusing your stats. Be 20, 4, 25, 5, blah, 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 goes up. Criticals and fumbles. Fortune plays a big role in the battlefield. You may get lucky and strike a vital location, but you could just as easily trip on rocks. Criticals and fumbles have more importance during combat than everyday encounters. When you roll a natural 10 on 10-sided dice, you've rolled a critical. Roll again and add both rolls. If you roll another 10, roll a third time and add that value too. This can continue many times and doesn't end until you fail to roll a 10. For example, rolling a 7 after rolling a 10 gives you a total of 17. However, if you roll a 10 after rolling a 10, you roll again. This new value is added to the 20 you rolled before. Not only do criticals allow you to hit opponents' Vs, they also give you a chance to inflict punishing and lethal critical wounds on your opponent. Fumbles, on the other hand, are a warrior's worst enemy. When you roll a natural 1 on a d10, roll again and subtract the next value from your base. Just like criticals, if you roll a nat 10 after rolling a natural 1, you must roll again and subtract that value as well. You cannot drop your base below a value of 0. As an example, rolling a 7 after rolling 1 means that if you subtract 7 from your base, so if you have a 7 ref and 6 swordsmanship, your roll would bring you to 6. However, if you roll a 10 after rolling a 1, roll again. Say you get a 4. That means you subtract 14 from your base and bottom out at 0. Just as criticals can disable enemies, fumbles punish you based on how high your negative was, as shown in the fumble outcome table. So, roll type. For melee attacks, for armed defense, for ranged attack, and unarmed attack defense. There's a special fumble table for spells. This is for melee. Critical wounds. Whenever you roll over your opponent's defense by 7 or more, you score a critical wound. When you score a critical wound, roll the appropriate critical wound table to see what you hit, what wound you created. Each level of critical wound inflicts bonus damage and forces the opponent to make a stun save. Bonus from a critical wound cannot be stopped by armor. So that's bonus damage. This is the bonus damage. Everything else can be stopped by armor, but the bonus damage, just goes through. Beat defense by 7. You got a simple crit. You get bonus damage of 3. By 10, complex 5. 13 is difficult and 8 damage. 15 is deadly and 10 damage. Stabilizing versus treating. Stabilizing a critical wound is akin to cauterizing a wound, tying a tourniquet, or otherwise keeping the wound from gushing blood or killing you some other way. It requires a first aid roll equal to the healing hands to see of the wound. Once stabilized, the wounded party is at a negative, but no longer being killed by the wound. Only once the doctor has healed the wound with multiple healing hand rolls does the wound begin to heal. More information can be found on page 174. Aimed criticals. If you aimed for a location and scored a critical wound, you do not roll on the critical tables. Instead, you apply the appropriate wound for the level you scored. If it was a torso or head strike, roll a d6. If the value is 1 and 4, your score the lesser effect. 11 for head or 6-8 for torso. If the value is 5 or 6, you score the greater effect. 12 for head or 9 to 10 for torso. And that's why the balance trait for aimed critical wounds is good. So this is a simple critical table. This is the complex critical table. Monsters without anatomy. Elementa and specters are kept alive by magic and do not have physical forms like other living creatures. This means that they do not suffer certain critical wounds that rely on damaging organs. If you score one of the following critical wounds against an elementa or specter, strike instead does bonus damage as stated in the bonus damage table. They're immune to foreign object, ruptured spleen, torn stomach, sucking chest wound, and septic shock. Specters are also immune to any strike to the legs, since they have no legs, so you must roll again on location. So they get additional bonus damage here. Simple takes 5, 10, 15, 20. Here's the difficult table and the deadly table. You get a lot of instant death things in the deadly table. Prosthetics. You could buy prosthetics to replace arms or legs that you lose in combat. They allow you to use that limb again and alleviate the penalty somewhat. Basic arm prosthetics allow you to use your arm for basic tasks that don't require fine manipulation, opening doors, grabbing people, but you cannot wield a weapon with them. Basic leg prosthetics allow you to move at 3/4 your normal speed, but you still take a -5 to dodge, escape, and athletics. Quad arm prosthetics allow you to use your arms for basic attacks that don't require fine manipulation and allow you to wield weapons at a -5 penalty. Quality leg prosthetics allow you to move at your normal speed and give you a -3 to dodge, escape, and athletics. If they are struck in combat, the wearer takes no damage, but the prosthetic comes off. Effects. Bombs, traps, and spells, and even conventional weapons can all inflict extra unpleasant effects. Each effect goes on until you take the steps specified to end it, and you cannot suffer from multiple instances of the same effect at the same time. There's fire, stun, poison, bleed, freeze, staggered, intoxication, hallucination, nausea, suffocation, and blinded. Prosthetics note: in our world, simple prosthetic limbs have been around since the time of the Egyptians. If you're interested in the story of the ultimate prosthetic badass, check out Gotts von Berlichtenstein, whose prosthetic hand made him a legend. I feel like I murdered his name. I am sorry. Gotts von Berlichtenstein. Bleh, I give up. I'm sorry. It's done. The last thing you want: being poisoned, being on fire, being frozen. All of these are things you can deal with during a fight. They hinder you, but not so much that you can't continue fighting. Being stunned, on the other hand, is incredibly dangerous. While stunned, you are a sitting duck. Any opponent who wants to attack you is likely going to and will often score critical wounds since you aren't in any shape to dodge. Luckily, being struck once, even if it doesn't penetrate your armor, will snap you out of your stun state. So sometimes it's good, other times it's terrible. Susceptibility. Some monsters are especially susceptible to certain effects, fire, poison, etc. Attacks the target is susceptible to double damage. There's an important caveat. If a monster is susceptible to fire, it takes double damage from the fire. Non-damage spells that effect type impose a -2 to resistance rolls and double their duration. The exception to this case is silver. All monsters are considered susceptible to silver. See monster resistances and silver. It kind of means they also take double damage from silver. Some monsters are resistant or even immune to specific effects. This could be because of magical force protection or due to attunement with that particular force. If a subject is immune to a force and that force does not affect it in any way, if a subject is resistant to a force, it takes half damage from that force and gets a +2 on not a negative, a +2 on all rolls to resist it. Fire damage. Monsters are resistant to all non-silver weapons. However, this does not apply to fire. Healing yourself. You can attempt to stabilize your own wounds, but it's much harder due to wound threshold penalties. Monster resistances and silver. All monsters except beasts are resistant to non-silver weapons. Let's take half damage from any weapon not made of silver. All such monsters are susceptible to silver instead, though this susceptibility manifests differently. Due to an unknown force, silver repels monsters and burns them. A silver weapon striking a monster does the extra damage noted in the weapon stats. A silver object that is not a weapon does an extra 1d6 damage. If a piece of silver becomes lodged in a monster, they take damage as if poisoned until they take an action to pull it out. So, I guess I was wrong. They don't take double damage from silver weapons. Death saves. When you have been knocked down below 0 health points, you are put into death state. In death state, all your stats, both primary and derived, or to 1/3 normal, you must make a death save at the same value as your unmodified stun save. If you fail the save, you die, and no amount of magic can bring you back. If you succeed, you survive for that round. Each round, you must make another death save at a cumulative -1. On a successful roll, you survive. On a failure, you die. A tough player can survive for quite a while, but eventually you're going to cash out. Every time you're injured in death save, you must make another death save at a cumulative -1. That means your death save roll that is tied to your body stat just goes down, and you roll a d10 and you have to roll under that number or you die. To stop someone from dying, you must stabilize them. To stabilize a character, make a first aid roll at a DC equal to how far the character is below 0 HP. If you fail, the patient continues to die, but if you succeed, they're back to 1 HP and leave the death state. Stabilizing a critical wound. If you can't get to a doctor immediately and your injury is killing you, you can attempt to stabilize the wound. Stabilizing a critical wound lessens its effects so you can keep fighting or get to a doctor in time. Stabilizing a wound requires one first aid check with a DC based on the severity of the wound. See the table. Stabilizing a wound doesn't heal it. The healing clock only starts when someone applies healing hands or healing spells on it. So, stabilization. Critical tables. DC 12 for simple, 14 for complex, 16 for difficult, and 18 for deadly. In-depth combat. Alright, this is where the meat and potatoes happens. Melee weapons. Melee weapons, the most prevalent in the world of Witcher, rely on ref to hit. The formula for melee attacks is ref stat, weapon skill, modifier, and a d10. Whoops. So, sometimes you have a modifier that gives you a malus or a positive. You add that to your whip stat and weapon skill base, and then you roll a dice. That's about it. Brawling and wrestling. You may wind up in the midst of combat unarmed. In this case, you'll be brawling. Unless marked differently, these attacks each take an action and replace fast or strong strikes. Brawling does non-lethal damage. Punch. You can punch or strike with your fist, palm, or elbow, dealing an amount of non-lethal damage equal to your punch damage. You can choose to make strong or fast strikes with punches. Kick. You can kick or strike with your foot or knee, dealing an amount of non-lethal damage equal to your kick damage. You can choose to make strong or fast strikes with kicks. Push kick. Instead of doing damage, you could try to push a target back with a powerful forward kick. If you succeed, you push the opponent back a number of meters equal to your body divided by 3. So your body in a third. So if your body is 9, you push them 3 meters back. You only do half damage, and this attack always hits the torso. Charge. Much like armed charges, you can move up to your run speed and then make a strong punch or kick. This strike still suffers a -3 to hit, but if the attack is blocked, you make a physique check against the opponent's physique roll to knock the target prone. Disarm. You could roll brawling against your opponent's dodge escape to attempt to disarm an opponent. Unlike disarming with a weapon, you could try to either knock the opponent's weapon away, 1d6 divided by 2 meters in a random direction, or to grab the weapon with a free hand. Trying to take the weapon imposes a -3 malus. Grapple. You could roll to grab hold of a target. While grappled, The target cannot move away from you and takes a -2 to all physical actions. This is a prerequisite to pins, chokes, and throws. Each turn, your opponent can attempt a dodge escape roll against your brawling to slip loose. Pin. While grappling, you can pin your opponent. If you succeed, the opponent is immobilized and cannot move or act until they escape with a dodge escape roll against your brawling. Choke. After grabbing a target, you can roll to attempt to choke them. The opponent is suffocating until they are able to escape. Throw. While grappling, you could roll to throw your opponent. The opponent is thrown to the ground, prone, takes damage equal to your punch damage, and must make a stun save at -1. That means their modifier for their stun save is at a -1, meaning they can get stunned way easier. Trip. You could attempt to kick the target's legs out from under them and knock them prone. If you succeed, the opponent falls prone. This is the scatter table. Roll 1d10 to find out where the projectile went. Roll another 1d6 to how many meters it over undershot. So, this is the scatter table. If you miss with a bomb or someone dodged out of the way, etc. Special attacks. Anyone can swing a sword. Real soldiers like to throw in special strikes for best effect. Unless marked otherwise, each special attack requires one action, replacing a normal attack action. Charge. By taking a full round, you can execute a charge against a target. Charge allows you to move up to your rush speed and then make a strong strike. The strike still suffers a -3 to hit, but if the attack is blocked, you can make a physique check against your opponent's roll to knock the target prone. Pommel strike. By making a weapon attack, you can non-lethally strike against a target by bashing with a pommel of your weapon. Have the weapon's damage roll and apply it as non-lethal. Disarm. By making a weapon attack, you can attempt to knock an opponent's weapon out of their hand with a well-aimed strike. If you succeed, you knock the opponent's weapon away from their hand and send it flying 1d6 meters away in a random direction. See the scatter table. Trip. By making a weapon attack, you can attempt to strike the target's legs and knock them prone. If you succeed, the opponent falls flat. Feint. By rolling deceit instead of your first fast strike, you can attempt to feint. If your opponent fails an awareness check against your deceit roll, you confuse them and can make your second attack at a +3. Dual wielding. Dual wielding allows you to make a joint attack with two weapons you hold at the same time. This joint attack replaces a fast or strong strike. When making a joint attack, roll 2 attacks with a -3 to both of them. Your opponent must have 2 weapons, or weapon and shield, if they want to parry or block both attacks. If they can't, they must dodge or reposition to escape the second attack. You can make a joint attack with any 2 weapons you can hold in your one hand, including 2 hand crossbows. Prone. When knocked prone, you take a -2 to your attack and defense rolls until you take a move action to stand up. After standing, you can take your remaining action to move as far as you normally would have. Shield attacks. You could use a shield in combat as a bludgeoning weapon. Using your shield as a weapon requires a melee attack roll, and it does damage equal to your punch, but lethal. Medium shields do damage as though your punch were 2 levels higher, and heavy shields do damage 4 levels higher. See hand table on page 48. Defending against an ambush. If you are attacked while unaware, you still have a chance to defend yourself. That's important. Everyone has the ability to defend themselves from an ambush. Defense and full round actions. You could use a standard defensive action even if you've made a full round action during the round. For example, you can still dodge a sword strike even if you spent the entire round in a run. Defenses. When defending against attacks, there are many options for getting clear or of stopping a killing blow. Unless marked otherwise, all of these defenses work against ranged as well as melee attacks. Dodge. By moving slightly out of the way, you can dodge an incoming attack. Dodging requires a dodge escape roll against your opponent's attack roll. Reposition. By ducking or rolling out of the way, you can not only dodge an attack, but also maneuver to escape being surrounded. If you succeed in an athletics roll versus your opponent's attack roll, you avoid the attack and can move a distance equal to half your speed in any direction that is not blocked. Block. You can choose to attempt to block an incoming attack with your weapon, shield, or even yourself. Only a shield can block ranged attacks. Roll your weapon skill to negate an attack with your weapon. Roll melee to negate an attack with a shield. Whichever you parry with takes 1 point of damage. If you are in a seriously tight fix or protecting someone else, you can attempt to block an attack with your arm or hand by using brawling. If you succeed, you immediately take the attack's damage to that location. Armor is applied, so you may not take damage if your armor is high enough. Parry. You can parry an attack at -3 to your weapon melee brawling skill. If you succeed, you knock the opponent's weapon aside and not only negate the attack, but do so without damaging your weapon. Your opponent is also staggered. You cannot parry bow or crossbow attacks, but can parry thrown weapons at -5. Ranged weapons. Anything shot or thrown counts as a ranged weapon. To make a ranged attack, bows, crossbows, thrown weapons, you must roll a combination of Dexstat, weapon skill, RNG mod, and 1d10. Greater than the defensive roll of your target. If you are attacking an unaware or inanimate target, you must beat its target DC, augmented by its size. See size modifiers. These are the size modifiers. Small, cat or necker, +2, man, +0, large, troll or horse, -2, huge, like a fiend, -4. So, the game... Cody Ponsman says that Point Blank is a holdover from Cyberpunk 2020. So don't worry about that. Close. 1/4 the listed range of the weapon. Target mod 0. Medium. Half the listed range of the weapon. Target DC 20. -2. Long. The listed range of the weapon. Target DC 25. -4. Extreme. Half times 2 the listed range of the weapon. DC 30. -6 mod. Crossbows and loading. Crossbows are wonders of mechanical workmanship that allow weak people to fire bolts of the same strength as trained bowmen. However, they require more time to load than a bow to their loading mechanism. This extra time means that loading a crossbow takes 1 action. Bombs and traps. Bombs and traps work slightly differently from other ranged attacks. Bombs can be thrown at a single opponent, but their damage affects an area. Everyone in that area takes the bomb's damage to every part of their body and feels the bomb's effects. If you fail your athletics check, the bomb lands off target. See the scatter table. AKA, to throw a bomb, you use your athletics. Traps are placed in an area. When a person enters the area, they trigger the trap, and they, and anyone in that radius, feel the trap's effects and take the trap's damage to every part of their body. Environmental effects. The environment can and will affect the way you travel and fight. In some cases, the weapons you choose to use. Light and darkness, weather, water, and terrain all change the course of battles in their own way. Lighting. Light affects your aim and situational awareness. Glaring light, -3 to awareness, and -3 to attack and defense if facing the sun. Daylight, no penalties. Dim light, -2 to awareness. Darkness, new moon or a deep cave, -4 to awareness, and -2 to attack and defense. Snow and ice. Snow and ice are a benefit and a hindrance. When tracking in snow, you gain a +3 to wilderness survival to follow recent tracks, but a -3 to follow old tracks. When fighting on snow and ice, you make a DC 14 athletics check for running or attacking to stay standing. If naked or lightly clothed in icy conditions, you can survive without shelter for a number of hours equal to your stun. After that time, you enter death state. Extreme heat. Traveling and fighting in extreme heat is incredibly difficult even for trained warriors. When traveling through a desert environment, such as the Korath Desert, characters lower their stamina by a third. If they are wearing medium or heavy armor, they halve their stamina. Swampy or overgrown environments. When traveling and fighting in swamps or brush, you have to keep an eye on the ground around you. You take a -2 to dodge, escape, and athletics. Fighting in water. Fighting underwater is difficult, but definitely much more dangerous. While underwater, you take a -3 to awareness. When fighting with melee weapons underwater, the rough of all weapons falls to 1. And attacking, blocking, and parrying are an additional -2 malice. While underwater, use athletics to dodge out of reposition. Thrown weapons, with the exception of spears, will not function underwater, and both crossbows and bows have their ranges quartered and their damage halved. They also suffer the -2 penalty to attack. Repositioning in water. When repositioning underwater, you can move in 3 dimensions, but are only able to move half your leap. Environmental awareness. Most of my students assume that strength and speed are the key elements in combat. But in my personal study of the subject, I believe that environmental awareness is the key. Can you cause a careless opponent to trip over door sills or tree roots? Can you maneuver them into a crowd of self-important little old ladies? Or perhaps an armed opponent bigger than either of you? Is there anything in your environment that can be used as a weapon? A drunken belligerent can often be set on fire with a candle or hearth ash. Can you climb trees and perhaps drop on your assailant, or cause him to slip on your as you carefully cross streams or rivers? It is true, my students, that most of you do not have overwhelming strength or martial training, but you may use your sharp wits even more effectively. Alright, this is enough for now. I'm going to cover magic combat in another video. Thank you for watching. I am signing off. Take care and cheers.